the culture or misunderstanding of the values. And it's more about feelings as opposed to, what do the values really mean in application. But sometimes we mess up, right? Sometimes we mess up, and so there's probably no one in leadership that hasn't, been whacked at some point.
Yeah, but that's good. That's good because, you have people who keep it alive, and that's, I think that's what you need. You need other people who keep you accountable for your goals and remind you. But it's nice to see that you have a leader at the top who's willing to be whacked, because there are some organizations that, I just recently heard of an organization that doesn't do any 360 feedback to the leadership team. So it's like, well, how can you have any kind of accountability if the leaders can just do whatever they want and nobody gets a say? And I know you're.
That's a good policy instituted by leaders.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Really.
Right. That's right.
Self-protective. I'm thinking.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, the 360, I think, it's something that we do certainly for role review with leaders, and I think it's been so important because. What happens is people see that their feedback matters and that there's action and the leader can improve. I mean, when we talk about mistakes, we all make them, leader or otherwise, we're human. And so it's really about keeping that communication open, and putting on the table what the issues are, rather than hiding them, because how do they get dealt with? And that, I think, connects back with, Brian and what he's doing with, trying to help us build quality, in what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Louisa.
Sorry, I was just going to say, but that's so true because, sometimes we think the 360 is just to punish, right? But I think what you said is how do leaders learn and grow? If you don't get feedback, it's also about what can I learn from the people that I work with, right? In terms of being able to take that back and become an even better leader. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, that I could talk for a long time on the concept that you just raised there, but our 360 process, we really call it, I guess we call it peer review because it'll be a peer from another team that will come in, or two peers, and facilitate this process. But it involves the whole team kind of through the whole process. So it's a peer role review, but it's also a team health check-in. Because we recognize one of the roles of leaders is to help the team be healthy, and so this creates a forum where the teams themselves can talk about issues, and they may or may not be related to the leader, but we kind of do that all together, and it creates again a forum for people to identify issues that maybe haven't been spoken of before, those kinds of things. So sorry, how does it happen then? You've got two people who are your peers that come in and sort of facilitate this process? Yeah, so two people from outside the team will come in and facilitate the process with the leader. Okay, but they're leaders as well, is that right? Okay, so they're leaders, but just the role title typically that we would use as the head of a project would be project coordinator. Okay. So a couple other project coordinators would come together, and we've got tools and formats that we use, but basically a lot of talking about looking at the role description of the leader and how are they doing? Let's get feedback on that, and get feedback from elsewhere in the organization and from customers, from frontline. And but then also some questions in that about how's the team doing? How do you feel as part of this team? Do you have a chance to contribute to the team? Those kinds of things. So in addition to just talking about the leader, we talk about the team and how the team is doing. But that's very interesting because I would imagine if I'm a peer coming to review, another peer, I'm also learning. So I'm also saying, oh, isn't that interesting? So-and-so does it like that. I never thought of, doing it that way. Yeah, so absolutely. It's almost like you have this sharing of information that wouldn't happen otherwise. Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. And, a similar principle actually applies to the work of our frontline people. We used to do what we'll call like a file audit. So looking at the cases that our individual staff are working on, and check them off for a bunch of things, right? And come up with a score. Well, here's how we're doing. And but it seemed like we're doing a lot of these, and a lot of people are doing really well, and we're getting this number that says we're doing really well. But why are we doing all this work? And so we've recently sort of shifted our focus for that whole sort of file review process to look at how can we learn? So let's look at this not as a ranking ourselves and saying we're doing really good, but look at the places where we're likely to find ways to learn and help people grow in the job. So working more with new people than the people who have clearly established that they know what they're doing, and using peers to do that process as well, again creates that cross learning. So similar kind of principle.
Yeah. But I think it changes the focus of the performance review, doesn't it? It's not you're right, it's not about saying tick, did it, this is how I am, this is how I'm going to rank myself. I love what you said when you said it's about learning. So it just changes, so it's not intimidating anymore. Now it's more about, where am I at in terms of where am I at with my learning, and where can I go next with my learning. And I would imagine that's a much more positive experience than feeling like you just got run over by a truck, which is what typically happens in a performance review.
Right.
Yeah.
I just did a 360 for Rob, my partner, and he's taken an MBA. And it was interesting because it did bring up questions that I should be thinking about. As I'm answering questions, and he asked for blunt feedback, I was answering them going, oh, and by the way, I'm not good at this either. But it's interesting. Just that whole process helps the person doing the review as well as the person getting the review.
Yeah.
It is I always refer to it as feedback. This feedback loop, you seem to have it in every place. It's collaborative. People are getting feedback and giving feedback. I don't think I've seen this anywhere.
It's true, but I think it all comes from trust, doesn't it?
Yeah,
because you don't. I've worked with organizations where feedback is taboo. It's just not the norm.
Yeah.
And probably because, when they've given feedback, they've been punished, or, something has gone awry, or it's just not part of the culture, to give feedback. So you're right. It seems like there's just this openness and trust.
There is. And as you were talking earlier, I'm thinking about sometimes we do have meetings where there's something that we deem to be sensitive that we don't talk about. Mm-hmm. But there's something happening outside of the room, and people are probably not being included, and that's not helping our trust. And you're bringing up things that I'm definitely going to carry it away today.
Yeah. There are things, of course, in because of law and other things that you can't be an entirely open book for everybody, but we know where those places are, and so if you're talking about HR kinds of issues, we know where we have to handle things differently.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I like the idea about having leaders and not managers, because the term manager seems to imply I have to manage you, right? I have to,
or that people need to be managed.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Whereas when you think about the word leader, you think much more about an inspirational kind of role, and I would imagine that. So you, like you said earlier, Brian, you've got an organization where you're going through tough times, but also it's just the norm for you to help all these other people who are going through tough times. So the situations that your people are dealing with are tough, right? You've got someone who's come in, I've worked in an employment resource center myself, and I know, there's reasons why people have been out of work for a number of years. They've suffered, some kind of illness sometimes, or, when you're talking about rehabilitation, right, and things like that, people with disabilities, right? These are all challenging situations, and there were times where, I would say, oh, excuse me for a moment in the middle of a meeting with a client, and get up and go cry, because some of the situations are so horribly sad. You just can't believe this poor person has just been through this. So I think you've sort of got two things going on there, not only all the challenges Northern Lights is having, but also, as a leader, you have to inspire someone who every day has to face these challenges, has to be positive in the face of adversity for all of their clients. So I think it's really a test in resilience, and I guess it's a long way of getting to, what are some of the things you do to build the resilience of your employees? Do you first of all, do you call it resilience? Is there something you call, I don't even know if you call it anything different, or what do you think?
Well, I think the concept of resilience is certainly alive. I don't know that we talk about it every day or reference it. But again, I think coming back to where we've been in the past, reflecting on the fact that we've been able to succeed, we've moved through difficult times before. The fact that we do have people coming back into Northern Lights, whether they make a choice because they have to leave for